Hi everybody, this is Keith. Welcome to VTS number 13. This month is the month of March 2006, in case you don't have a calendar nearby. Good to have you folks. Thanks for coming. Thanks for you new folks who signed up. I hope you enjoy where we're going. Thanks for you folks who've been here for a while. I hope you enjoy where we're going. And we're going to keep kicking on the topic of acting and defining characters and getting down to what I think is really the fun stuff of animation. The core of performance and character and storytelling and emotion and the stuff that I think really is the true illusion of life. I mean, motion stuff and things moving around and, making appealing motion and easy to read things, these are all good. But I really think that outside of the motivation of character and appeal and this narrative sense of telling a story, that animation is kind of dull to watch after a while. I mean, it's just motion for motion's sake. So anyways, here we are, and this month we're going to cover a couple of things. One of the things we're going to cover is how to define kind of like the baseline for each character in your project. Okay, whether you're making a short film for yourself or whether you're working professionally for somebody else, these are questions, these are things you need to define. And if you don't define them, then somebody who is above you, like the director or the animation supervisor or animation director, somebody needs to define these things about your characters. And so I'm going to give you some things to help you figure out how to give a baseline definition for your characters. Because the battle we want to fight this month is against sameness. Okay? We want to fight the battle against sameness. We do not want all our characters to move the same, to behave the same, to have the same activities, to have the same gestures, to have the same everything. Because that's not how life is. That's just not, it's not unique and it's not interesting to watch. So what we want to do is we want to explore how to bring some unique characteristics and unique and sincere poses and gestures and definitions to our characters, because that's when animation's really fun to watch. When you take and juxtapose one kind of a character definition against another and watch them play back and forth, now you got some stuff that's pretty interesting. And it's pretty indicative of a lot of animation today, even professional stuff on feature films, that these kinds of questions aren't being asked a whole lot. I can tell you from experience that, how does so-and-so move versus this person? Well, how does this character move against that person? Some places are asking these questions and defining them, but a lot of places aren't. I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of work being done out there where you can take the poses and actions off of this character and put them on that character, and it would look just the same. And so we want to fight that, because the classic masters of animation knew and understood how to juxtapose one character type against another. So I'm going to give you some things this month to talk about on that. And then the other big problem in animation, as I see it, the way it's being done a lot today, pardon me, getting over a cold, you'll have to excuse me if I have to clear my throat every now and then. One of the problems that I see is that it's generally indicative of younger animators, but cliches. Just cliches in how we pose and how we gesture and how we do things. And so what we want to do is we want to try and give you some tools. I don't want to say a formula, because I don't like that. I don't like the word, but there are tools, there are techniques, there are questions you can ask, and there are things you can do to help you get past the cliche and to get yourself into some unique performances. So we're going to cover that this month too. Again, it's going to be a month a little light on the video capture stuff. I apologize for those of you who really love that stuff. I promise you next month we get right back into that. But I really feel like we need to be talking a lot about this foundational theory stuff, because this is stuff that helps you make good decisions. And for me to just capture and show you how to move F-curves around and stuff like that, we'll get there, okay? Because when we get into the blocking and the scene preparation stuff, we're going to be rolling into that pretty quick. But this is stuff that I really think is important to cover before we get there. All right, because if I can just jump right to that and just show you how to move F-curves around or how to pose a character, or how to do this, or show you my workflow, without giving you the foundational principles of understanding why, then I think I'm not doing you any service, whether you like it or not. I mean, I have to apologize. So for those of you looking forward to some, show me how you animate kind of stuff, we'll get there. But it's back to that old thing. Ollie Johnson used to say, never make anything move unless you understand why. And so this month and last month is all about the why. So anyways, that's enough of the introduction. Let's move on to our first topic, which is how to define characters. All right? All right, the first thing we want to think about, as I said in my opening, is unique characters. Let's take a look at some examples. I can't show them to you without violating copyright laws, but we've all seen these movies. We all know these characters I'm going to talk about, so think about them in your head as we go through them, okay? Take a look at Monsters Incorporated. You have a really neat triangle of characters there, okay? Actually, you could probably make it a square if you throw in the little girl. All right. First character is Sully. Big, tall, lumbering good guy. All right. And you have his buddy, who's a smaller, more active fellow, voiced by Billy Crystal, Mike Wazowski. So you got Sully and Mike, and then you have the villain, who is Randall, voiced by Steve Buscemi, who's like the little purple serpent guy. Okay. Stop and think about how each of these guys moves, how they pose, how they react, how their bodies are, how their shapes are. I mean, there's a lot of neat things going on by using, first off, great design using color. Blue, green, purple. They all play well together, but they're all unique enough so that you can just, with an immediate bink, oh, purple, Randall, green, Wazowski, blue, Sully. Okay? A lot of times as animators, that stuff's out of our decision. But if you're making a short film, which I encourage everybody to try at least make some short film, these are things you want to think about, okay? You definitely want to think about how you can use design to differentiate your colors. But if Mike Wazowski moved the same way as Sully moved, a lot of what you accomplish in design would be washed away, okay? So again, another example is the classic Woody and Buzz, okay, from Toy Story. You have one guy who's posed and behaves a certain way, and you have another guy who's posed and behaves another certain way. And they're very distinct. And if you took the actions off of one and put them on the other, you would notice it. It would look like there was like this weird, Bugs Bunny chicken brain switch. Remember that old cartoon? So there's something going on here, and there's something that these animators did to help define who these characters are, and they're like a baseline that feed and inform everything else that's going on in the character. And everything about how they react, and everything about how they do. And it's really important for us to understand what it is they're doing. And so I've broken down a couple of things for us to help understand this. Let's define the character in a basic baseline sense. What I mean by baseline is like, who's your character when he's just standing waiting for the bus? Or when he's on the elevator? Or when he's in line at the cafeteria? Nothing's going on. Just who is he? What does he look like? Just observe the person standing there. And all of us have unique characteristics about us that define our baseline. Okay? First thing is an energy level. Some folks would say, well, what's the tempo of the character? Tempo is a word that is kind of a little dancing around for me because tempo can change. Okay? You can have a person who has a low energy level in a high tempo moment, and they will be high tempo in a low energy sort of way. Does that make sense? So I don't want to say what's the internal tempo of a character, because tempo changes based off a situation. I want to ask what's the internal energy level of a character. And there's basic 3 energy levels. So you've got a low energy level kind of guy, you got a normal energy level, and you got a high energy level kind of person. A low energy kind of guy is a person who's just gonna, it defines how they move, how they do something. A low energy kind of guy, when he brushes his teeth, is gonna be like, okay, he's not really super fast about anything. He's just not trying to exert a lot of energy. He's just trying to get by with as little energy as possible. All right, so a low energy guy, shaving. That's just who he is. He's kind of a low energy sort of fellow. Normal energy person, there doesn't seem to be any discernible fastness or slowness or height or lowerness, to their energy level. They just kind of do things in a normal sort of way. A high energy level person is someone who's going to do things in a high energy sort of way. So, when they wait for something, they're always shifting their weight and they're always moving around. They kind of got this nervous energy to them. And how they would brush their teeth is how they shave is done. It's just like a high energy level person. Just, we know these kinds of people. That's like they're always going. They just, okay. Those, it's a little, and it even determines how they walk. Like when I walk with my wife, she's kind of a high energy sort of person, and it's really funny because I'm kind of a low energy sort of person. And when we walk together, we're only together for a little while, and then slowly she starts going away from me, and I plodding along, and I'm thinking I got to pick up my pace if I'm going to keep up with my wife, because she's a little higher energy and I'm lower energy. And this is actually a fun little thing to play with in our animation. There's very distinct and unique aspects to our energy levels. So that's one thing that you can do to help define your character on a baseline. What is their energy level? High, medium, low. Second thing you do, oh no, I'm sorry, before I move on, energy level defines how we move. Okay? So that's one aspect of it. Second thing we can do is the overall emotional temperament of a person. And I think this is as wide open as there are possibilities. What we're trying to find here is a singular adjective that describes this person's basic emotional state or emotional reaction to just about everything. Okay? This defines how we react. And it's a story thing, it's a character motivation thing. It helps us define poses, it helps us solve questions, okay? So if our energy level is how we move, our baseline or our overall emotional temperament defines how we react. Okay, so let's say you have a nervous person. Whenever they hear a sound, they're not going to go, huh? All right, whatever. That's more of a calm person with a low energy level. What if it's a nervous person with a high energy level? What was that? What was that sound? Huh? What are you saying? See? It's a different kind of thing. It's an emotional level that's a little bit different. So let's say we've got a nervous person, a calm person, an angry person, an optimistic person, a pessimistic person, a person who is introverted or extroverted. We all know these kinds of people, and these are good things that just in a single word describe a basic person, okay? So, getting back to Monsters, Inc., let's take a look at Sully. Big guy, kind of a low energy level, okay? He's not catatonic, but he's got a lower energy level, and he's generally a calm fella, all right? Kind of optimistic. So, that defines how he's going to move and react, and I think that's a pretty good way of describing him. His little green buddy, like Wazowski, the one-eyed guy, higher energy level, nervous, excitable, okay? This defines how he reacts, and he's also a bit of a pessimist, okay? So by putting in excitable, nervous, and pessimist, these are three words that help describe his overall emotional state of mind, and it helps define how he reacts to things. Now, it's terribly simplistic because not everybody is always pessimistic. But when we're talking about animation and we're talking about telling stories, it helps to generalize a bit because it strips away a lot of levels of complexity and just tells a singular idea, kind of focuses it and exaggerates it. So that's what we like to try and do. All right? Okay, so we've got calm and angry and excitable or nervous or pessimistic or optimistic or introverted or extroverted. That's actually quite enough for most characters to help define how they are. You know, introverted another word would be shy, okay? And if you just work with just that limited vocabulary to define a character, you've got lots of possibilities. So we're defining how a character moves by their energy level and how a character reacts to life around them by their emotional state. Moving on, let's talk about how we define the character's poses. Okay, because motion is defined by poses, but it's also a tempo thing. It's also a spacing and a timing thing. The reaction is helping determine pose, but what does that look like? Okay, so some of you, most of you, I trust, have probably read a little article I wrote on my website about power centers. And that's borrowing from Ed Hooks, who talks about it in his first book, Acting for Animators, and he uses it quite a bit in his seminars. And I think it's a great mnemonic. It's a wonderful little tool to help us find ways of expressing characters in different ways. So by moving the power center around, you get all kinds of possibilities. There are no rules about combining power centers with emotional types and energy levels. Okay? You can do anything with them. Okay, you can have a high external power center for a guy who is a low energy, calm type of fellow. I mean, the normal reaction would think, well, let's see, low energy, calm. Well, his power center would be kind of low, like down on his hips, like, dude. But you can also have low energy, calm, higher outward power center, like, it's out in front of him. He's gonna be like, it's stoner dude, like, dude. It's out here, and it defines him, Or it could be back in his neck, so it can be more like, I'm trying to think, Napoleon Dynamite is kind of inside of himself. He's kind of calm, low energy kind of level, but his power center is kind of right behind his head, so he's kind of like, dude. So you can move it around and get all kinds of unique things. So you can have 3 guys who are low energy, calm types, and just by moving different power centers around, you get 3 unique possibilities. So there's no rules about power centers, but they're really good to help you kind of find a unique way of expressing a different character. Okay, so that's one aspect of pose. The other aspect of pose is what I call the internal tension of a character. Okay? How does a person hold themselves? How do they hold their joints? Okay? It's either loose, pardon me, it's either loose or it's going to be tight or somewhere in between. I'm kind of a loosely held person. My shoulders kind of drop, my hands aren't up a lot, my hands kind of dangle down a bit, my head's kind of wobbly, I kind of shift around, and I'm a little sloppy in myself. I mean, I'm just the kind of guy I am. Some people are far more, they're wound up a little tighter. The shoulders are up a bit, the head's up a little bit, the elbows are bent, the hand, like Wallace and Gromit. Good example. Gromit, the dog, pretty loose. Dude just kind of sitting around, he's reading his book or he's doing this, but he's kind of loose in how he holds himself in a single pose. Wallace, on the other hand, is a little bit tighter, a little bit higher up, okay? He's a little more of a excitable, high energy kind of guy, whereas Wallace is a little bit more of a calm, lower energy kind of guy. Not low, but lower, all right? And by holding himself loose or by holding himself tight, we help define how we'd pose them. So it would feel kind of weird to pose Wallace in a very kind of loosey, kind of back sort of way. It would feel out of character, right? It would just seem kind of odd. Going back again to Monsters Incorporated, let's take a look at Wazowski. He's a guy who is a high energy level, kind of a high power center, excitable sort of fellow, and he's pretty tightly wound. Okay, he moves and he's kind of there, but he'll have his moments where he just kind of goes, huh? But in general, his posing is a little more, little tighter inside of itself. There's a higher level of tension in him. Whereas Sully has a lower level of tension. He does his little weight shifts, he does his thing, he's drooping. Sully's a bit more like I am, just kind of lower energy, lower power center, kind of a calmer reacting, looser in how he holds himself. So, power centers and tension help define the basic way. It gives us a template of working on poses. So when I'm working on a pose for this character for this moment, and I think, okay, that's right, he's a character who has a lower level of inner tension and a higher power center. Well, those 2 things right there help me define really neat, unique poses for any situation, as long as I try and keep those things in mind, okay? And then I say, well, this guy's internal emotional state, his baseline emotional state is that he's an excitable sort of fellow. Well, that helps me decide how he's going to react. Okay, is he going to react large to something or small to something, quickly to something, not quickly to something? Is he going to see the best or the worst? These are all great why questions. And then the energy level is, okay, how will he react and how will he move? How will he go about doing something about the moment? Okay? If he's going to go running to catch the elevator, is he going to be a guy who's going to really going for it? Or is he going to be kind of like boom, boom, boom? I didn't catch the elevator. I'll get the next one. Different people react different ways. So the thing that helps us find uniqueness in our characters and play these characters off of each other. Like I said, there are movies being made out there today. I mean, feature and films where these questions are not being asked. I hate to say it. There are movies being made where they are being asked, and this information gets down to animators. But there are movies being made where these questions, if they are asked, don't ever get to the animators. And so it's up to us to decide, well, I guess I'll make this guy move this way. And a lot of times in animation, we'll kind of figure this stuff out, and we start feeding off of what this person does and what this person does. But I really think that the definition of these characters to start with really helps us. So if you're doing a story, or if you're making something for yourself, a short film, you as a director, because that's what you are, you've got to ask these questions. You've got to be able to say, who is this character in the baseline definition? And how can I make him unique and different from this guy, or that girl, or that dog, or whatever? And if you're working in a professional environment and you're expected to bring performance to these characters and this information isn't given to you, well then either you have to figure it out, which I think is probably not your job as an animator. It is your job to ask, but if you don't want to be doing stuff that doesn't mesh with the director's vision, you need to be asking your animation supervisor, your animation director, or the director directly. That was kind of a weird. You need to ask people above you who are defining what this story is and who these people are. You need to ask them, well, what is their energy level? Are they a high energy level person, a low energy level person? What's their overall emotional temperament? Are they excitable? Are they nervous? Are they calm? Are they angry? Are they pessimistic, optimistic? And you need to ask, well, how do they hold themselves? Do they hold themselves a little tighter? Are they a little looser? Are they kind of down inside themselves? Are they kind of up high? You got to ask these questions. Because if you don't ask these questions, then what happens is that you will automatically just start animating things in a default way. And a lot of times, it ends up looking like me, or you, or whatever. And that's one of the dangers, if we're not careful, of using video reference too much. But that's a different story. We'll cover video reference in probably 2 months. Probably 2 months, maybe 3. But we'll get to video reference on how to use it and what to be careful of and how to be mindful. Okay? But one of the dangers, I'll just give you a little preview, one of the dangers of using video reference highly without thinking about it is that we'll end up making everything move like we move, or everything be like we are, without being true to the character. Okay? So we got to be careful of that stuff. All right, so there's a conversation about who are my characters. And so here's a great little test for you guys. You guys want some homework? Here's some homework. Pop in any animated video you want. Okay? Anyone made, whatever. Doesn't matter. List down the major characters and then go through and define them by their energy level, by their overall emotional state, or their default emotional state of mind, their power center, and their inner tension. Take those 4 things, and as a homework assignment, go through any animated movie, pick out your characters, and define them. And you're going to start to see that there's some really neat things going on here. Okay? And I've already done a few for you, with Monsters, Inc. and stuff like that. But pop in Toy Story and take a look at it. Or, pop in Little Mermaid. It works traditionally, CG, doesn't matter. If it's a good animated movie, this stuff will be there. And so that's your homework, all right? And if you find some neat combinations or things that, you're going to find some things that you're going to find patterns, okay? But the patterns aren't rules, they're just patterns, okay? So you can actually mix up the patterns for some interesting, unique, fun things. So that's your homework. If you find something cool, hey, email it to me. And, maybe I'll talk about it next month and we'll share if we find some really neat things. So anyways, that's this topic. Let's move on to the next one, which is how to make things unique when we pose them. Okay, big stuff there. All right, sorry about being so windy, but like I said, it's stuff I'm seeing. I'm sitting in movie theaters and I'm watching and I'm like, that guy is moving like that guy. Who forgot to ask that question? So anyways, it's all about getting better. It's about me getting better. I mean, it's not like I do this stuff all the time either. I try, but we've all got to improve. Okay, so the next thing is the biggest battle, and I see this, and sometimes I'll call this, and this is nothing against folks, but sometimes I'll call this the 10-second club syndrome, which is characters posing themselves in non-unique ways. Just these vaudevillian kind of cliche gestures and stuff. And why do I call it the 10-second syndrome? Not because I think the guys at 10-second club are great. I mean, I used to do it when I wasn't animating, back when I was in management. I swear for years the only animation I did was for the 10-second club. But because there's a lot of young folks there, a lot of beginners, and we all struggle with this stuff when we begin, which is we're all struggling like, well, how do I make the arm move and not go, So we tend not to worry too much about what the pose looks like. We tend to worry more about how it moves, because we're struggling to understand the language of animation. So we struggle with the principles and the poses. A lot of times, if it's not unique, okay, it's enough for me to just make it move okay. And that's where we all start. I mean, I remember that's where I started. We all start at a point where we're not quite sure. We don't have the level of understanding to be able to do stuff that's relatively unique. So we tend to pick the same, I don't know, for lack of a better word, silent film poses. And silent film was done at a time when the stage acting for the day was still very iconic. The choices of poses were telegraphing, oh, I'm so tired. We would these kind of goofy things. And so as time went by, the Stanislavski was a guy who, Russian dude. Read books on Stanislavski method of not animation, but of acting. You see, he started to ask questions about reality, about internal motivations, rather than these external poses that indicate an idea. Getting away from the iconic representation of something and getting more towards what would people really do, and giving a level of depth and sincerity to the performance that was lacking before. Okay, so we in animation struggle with the same thing, because we are limited in our ability to impact our audiences by how well we can tap into that something that makes them say, I know exactly what that means. Even though it's not like iconic, I get it, and it feels right, and it feels sincere, and I'm drawn into the story, because that person, that thing on the screen, which has never existed and doesn't exist because it's just a cartoon, I emote with that. I feel for it. I feel connected to it. I understand it as a person. I mean, you take a look at Dory towards the end of Finding Nemo, the shot where she's like, Marlin's swimming away, and she's like, well, don't go, because when I'm with you, I'm home. And there's that's a very sad moment. And you're thinking, when I was watching, I was like really moved. I'm thinking, I am about ready to cry over pixels. That's a really good job. That's a really good job. When you stop and think about it, that character does not exist. It's not a real person. It's pretend. Didn't want to burst anybody's bubble, but it's true. So how do we do things that are unique to the moment and also unique to the character? Well, I like to think of a systematic approach, okay? Again, I don't want to use the word formula, because formula implies that if you use it the same way every time, you get the same results. That's a recipe. I'm not interested in making recipes. What I'm interested in doing is giving you templates, or giving you a systemized way of asking the right questions to get different answers, okay? So the first thing we like to do in this, how do I get a unique pose for a moment for this character, for this time, for this action, for this whatever. The first thing, and I picked this up from an acting class. Okay, we had an acting teacher come in when I was at DNA, and he came in, and a good guy, good actor, director, and stuff like that, but he didn't know a lick about the animation process. And to a certain degree, that was a plus and it was a minus. Okay, the plus was that he wasn't biased at all towards it or against it, and wasn't all caught up in, well, you can't do this and you can do that. The other thing was that he didn't have a clue how we did our jobs. And so the first time he tried to do the class, he was trying to teach us like he was teaching actors. Now, here's the thing about acting classes, and you have to understand this as an animator. If you go to an acting class that isn't designed specifically for animators, like if you go to Ed Hook's class, Ed's really good about understanding animation. He understands animators. He knows the challenges of our job. Okay, he's done 10 years of this stuff, so he knows how to approach it in such a way as to make the acting stuff relevant to us. And he knows our limitations, and he's doing a really good job with it. But if you go to just any other guy or any other person teaching an acting class and they don't know anything about animation, they're going to assume that I'm just going to teach you like I teach actors. One of the things is that you have to understand that actors use their own bodies as a puppet. Okay? It's really the only difference, because they're Their characters don't exist. Those people aren't real. Those situations aren't real. They're making pretend as well. It's just that they actually have a puppet that is themselves. So if I am playing a character and I have to be sad, I have to make this puppet cry. Well, a lot of the ways we do that in acting is we play mind games with ourselves, which is what a lot of Stanislavski or the method acting or that immersive or the mind mnemonics. There's so many different ways to approach it, so many different schools of thought. But the basic gist of it is an actor is using his own body as a puppet to portray something that isn't really there. Okay, so they have to trick their body into thinking that something is really happening. Okay. Insofar as, and then they play off of another person who's doing the same thing, and if they can suspend their own connection to reality and go off into this other place and play off of each other, then they're doing a good job, and those of us who watch buy in. Okay? As animators, we're not using this as our puppet. We're using something else, either the drawn line, the stop motion puppet, or the CG character that is given to us. That's our puppet. So the tricks that actors use to manipulate this puppet don't always work. In fact, I would say that generally they don't work for moving these other puppets around, because there's a distance there. This is again where maybe animation or video reference comes in handy, because then if you're one of those people who's gifted at moving this puppet around and taking your body and tricking yourself into being in a place or a time or pretending something and actually getting your body to react in such a way, and you can video record that, then I suppose that's useful to a certain extent. And that is useful to a point where you can kind of understand how certain things work. But the ultimate thing is, what goes on screen is not me, because I'm not pretty and I don't act very good. And trust me, if I could act, I'd act. There's a whole lot more money in acting than animation. Okay? So what we have to do is approach it from the outside in, which means we have to understand, how do we represent externally this internal motivation? And all the actor is doing is saying, well, I'm going to trick my internal self so that my external self just kind of takes over. We don't have that luxury. So what we do is we understand the internal and then analyze and show externally. Ours is a more intellectual approach than a visceral approach. It just has to be. It's just the nature of the business. Okay, enough of a setup. So what are the things that we do to help us? What are the right questions? What's the systematic approach to getting that unique moment, that unique pose, that unique gesture for that character in that time at that place? Okay, I think it's a 3-step process. The first step is find an abstract expression, a physical expression of an emotion. Okay? It can be cliche, it could not be cliche, it could be anything. Okay? So let's say we have emotion of freedom. Okay? Freedom. What does that look like? If a person's just standing at a bus stop feeling free, with no awareness of anybody else around them, or if they're just standing in their own living room feeling free, what does that look like? Okay? So let's just say we do this. You can't see me because the camera's zoomed in, but arms out and down, my head's up, and I'm just like, freedom, relief. This is awesome. Okay? I just passed my test. This is so good. I finally graduated. Or I finally got out of that crappy job I don't like anymore. Or, freedom. It's just, let's say that this is the external expression, an abstract idea of what is freedom or relief. Okay? Let's say we take disbelief or shock. Okay? Maybe we do this. That's a little cliche, like, oh my gosh. But maybe we could just, the hand on the head, one hand or two hands or something. This is like watch video of people in where bad things are happening on the news, and you see people like this all the time, like, I can't believe what just happened, or like, this could be an abstract expression of disbelief or shock. Okay, like, oh, holy cow. Okay? It's totally random. It doesn't matter. It's not tied to any moment. It's just the first step. Okay? Let's say embarrassment is a third one we want to use. So it's like, oh my gosh. We want to hide our face. It's like an emotional gesture. And that's what we talk about. And really when somebody says, Sometimes you'll hear Ed Hooks or other acting teachers talk about emotional gestures. That's basically what I just did. Is what is that emotional gesture? What that feeling expresses itself in your body somehow. So pick one. Pick something that expresses that idea. Okay? If I chose this as freedom, that's probably not going to read too well, because it's got to be tied to reality a little bit. Okay? So, those are our three choices. Freedom, disbelief, embarrassment. Just abstract expressions. Okay, that's the first step. So find whatever go back to last month, and I said, what is that internal emotion about? They can't have something. So how do they feel about it? Once you find that answer, how do they feel about it? Then jump to this and say, okay, what is that? What's an abstract expression, physical expression of that emotion? Okay, let's say somebody is shocked. Well, okay, there's an abstract expression of it. All right. So step one. Step two. Most of the time in animation, we are being given a scene that has what they call business. What is business? It's something that you have to get done to move the story forward, okay? The person has to enter the room and then leave the room, or they have to answer the phone, or they have to, open the door, or they have to turn on the car, or they have to whatever. Almost every scene has some kind of a business, okay? So there's a generic way to do all these things, okay? A person who is not shocked and who walks will just be walking. Very standard, very normal, just walk, walk, walk. I'm walking, I'm walking, I'm walking, okay? What you want to try and do is layer the abstract expression on top of the business. You do not want to go, oh, I'm in shock, I can't believe it. I'm going to walk over here to the door, and I'm going to be back in shock again. That doesn't work, does it? That'd be kind of silly. We're not episodic like that in our lives. We do things in emotional states. We have things that we accomplish, but we don't shift out of those emotional states in accomplishing them. In fact, it could be said that all acting or all good animation is driven from that emotional reality, and everything that you do is an expression of that emotion, okay? So, let's say a person needs to walk and they're in shock, and they're like, shock, and they're just going to kind of slowly walk and stagger. They're walking, they're getting from point A to point B like the story says they have to, but they still maintain this level of shock. Or let's say they're free, and they have to do the same thing, okay? It's like, oh man, this is so good. They're looser, they're happier, they're loose, they're free, they're relaxed, there's a relief to it. They're still getting from point A to point B. They don't go, oh, I'm so free. Walk, oh, that felt so good. Okay, we don't work that way. Embarrassment. Let's say a person is embarrassed and they have to turn and walk out of the room. They don't go, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm going to walk out of the room now. We don't focus. We don't do that. We go, oh, I'm so embarrassed, and we turn around and we walk away. Maintaining that expression. Maintaining that. Now that sounds really kind of simplistic. You're like, well, duh. Yet you'd be surprised at how often we don't do it. So what we do is we take that abstract expression and we try and find a way that it's something sincere, that's where observing life around you really makes a difference, okay? Stop and notice how people react to things, how people look in different emotional states, because that will give you a personal library of observed abstract expressions of emotions. And they're as varied as there are people. There's 6.5 billion people on this planet. There's 6.5 billion ways to show amazement. Okay? All of them slightly different. So observe and build up your personal observation library, and then when you need to express that emotion, dig into that observation library and express it, and then layer it on top of the business that needs to happen. Then the third step is, who is your character as a baseline definition? Okay, remember the part we just talked about? There's a reason why I talked about all that. The high energy level, the energy level, the default emotional state, the power center / tension thing, okay? That defines who your character is, how they react, how they move, and how they hold themselves in any given situation, okay? A person who is a high energy person with a nervous or excitable emotional default state, who has a high power center and has high tension, is going to run a different way than a person on the opposite end of the spectrum, okay? They're both going to run. They're both going to run away from danger, but they're going to do it in unique ways. Similarly, they'll both feel amazement or shock or disbelief, but they'll do it in different ways. They'll both feel embarrassment in an embarrassing situation, but they'll do it in different ways, okay? They'll both feel freedom in a moment of relief, but they'll do it in different ways, all right? So let's take a person. The one end of the spectrum is, let's say, low energy level, calm-ish person, optimistic, with a low power center and a loose disposition in how they hold their body. How would they feel in a moment of freedom? Oh, they might not be so big with the gesture. They might just go, whew, wow, that's good. They'll tilt the head back, their shoulders will drop a little bit. There'll be this feeling, remember that? But it'll be adjusted a little bit to who they are as a person. Let's say the opposite end of the spectrum. High energy level, nervous, excitable, high tension, and a high power center. How are they going to feel freedom? Well, you take that freedom expression, and then you just ratchet it up a bit, like, it's a little bit different. But it's still that, it's like, that's just so good. Because they're just going to react a different way. It's going to be unique to them. So see how we're layering this stuff together? You take the abstract emotional expression, the baseline, the business needs to happen, and on top of that, the person who they are as defined by our character definitions. You put those three things together, and you can do anything. Anything. And it's totally unique, totally right for the moment, totally fits the character. And that's how we start defining who characters are. That's how we start getting to that like crazy level of animation, like the super ninja stuff. This is the super ninja stuff, okay? I know people are like, well, give me the secrets. Give me the secrets to animation. What's the way to handle F-curves so that my animation's beautiful and Pixar quality? How you handle your F-curves really doesn't matter. This is the stuff that matters. Okay, this is the stuff that determines whether or not you're going to be working at this level or at this level. Okay, because the people who are really, really good are working at this level, and they're dealing with this stuff all the time. This is what they think like. And a lot of times they may not even think about it. It may come natural to them. This is where God calls it talent. The rest of us who aren't as talented, like me, have to figure out how to make this stuff work, define it, break it down, and use it as a template to help me get to this level. Because I'll be honest with you, my natural talent is probably right about there. But I try and study it some more and break it down so that I can figure out, well, how do I get to there? And this stuff helps me get my stuff closer to there. I'm not going to say I'm there yet because I'm just not, I'll be honest with you. But I'm better than what my talent level is because I've taken the time to study and break it down. And so my hope is that you'll take the time to look at how we define characters and then also how we find unique poses and unique gestures for a moment, and working it with the business and working it with the character, so that your stuff avoids the everything's the same feel to it. Character A moves like character B, moves like character C. Everybody does things the same way. Everybody moves the same speed. We want to avoid that. Okay, we want uniqueness because that's the richness. It's the tapestry of life. It's the thing that makes all of our stuff really unique and really powerful and really fun. Okay, so that's that topic, and let's wrap up. Okay, again, my apologies to those of you who like video capture of the Maya stuff and like to see, like I said, next month, we're going to do a lot of captured stuff because next month I'm going to get into breaking down dialogue and how to start building a scene, okay? And as we move further along, I'm going to build a scene for you, and it's going to be a lot of just watching me build a scene built off of the understanding of the things we covered last month and this month. Okay, these are the whys, and now I'm going to show you the hows. But that's going to be next month. So stick around if you feel like, well, I got ripped off this month. I didn't get my money's worth. I wanted to watch him animate. Stick around. You'll watch me animate soon enough. Okay, but I think this is the stuff I've been waiting for. When I started the VTS last month and this month, this is the stuff I was thinking about. But I thought, how do I get there without first explaining all these other things? Because we have to understand how to communicate the language of animation. So the last year was communicating the language of animation, how to spell, how to write, how to put things together, proper punctuation, as it were. Now I'm giving you the stuff of like what to say. And then now I'm going to wrap it together and we'll start moving into how to do it, okay? So, next month, how to break down a scene audio. That's all I'm going to talk about because there's a lot to it. There's a lot of ways to approach it. And I'll show you some samples of how other people do it, and then I'll spend a lot of time showing you how I like to do it because it makes sense to me. And whenever I show it to other animators, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. So maybe it helps you. Hey, I don't know. Anyways, thanks a bunch for playing along, for being a part of this. I hope this has been beneficial to you. I hope that you have gotten a lot out of it. I hope that you're able to take these things and use them in your own animation and, you know, start pushing your own self past just where your default level of talent is and start studying and understanding how to raise your game, how to become more believable. Because a lot of young animators ask me, well, what do I need on a reel to get into film? Or if I'm in games, how do I get out of games and into film? I'm telling you, the stuff I've just talked about is how you get into film. Because there's no shortage of people out there who know how to make things move okay. Okay, they're all over the place. There's lots of people who can make things move okay. The thing that there's a shortage of is people who can make them move sincerely, believably, and well, and communicate a personality. Okay, there's lots of folks who can make things move okay. There's a dire shortage of people who know how to make things believable and sincere and acting. It's all the big delineation between professional and amateur animation in 2006, and I think in years to come, is the level of acting. Okay, because the level of draftsmanship has kind of been taken away from us with the computer, although that might come back where we have to hand draw stuff. But that's a separate layer. I'm talking just about the principles of motion have been covered for about 70 years, and folks know them, and there's books about them and stuff like this. But this acting stuff, this is the key. This is the stuff that's going to help you get past a certain point. It'll get you where you want to go in this business, I think, because I've hired plenty of animators, and I've been in a situation where I've had to put a team together, and when I'm looking at reels, of course, the baseline is, can they make things move okay? Well, I'm generally not going to even be interested if they can't. But then I have a pile of people who can make things move okay, but I've only got so many jobs. Those jobs are not going to go to the people who make the things move the prettiest. They're going to go to the people who have the best acting ideas. I can help somebody learn how to make things move prettier. It's much more difficult to help somebody make good acting decisions because I can't, as a supervisor or as a director, I can't babysit everybody's decisions all the time. So this stuff is to help you understand how to make better acting decisions, how to make better pose decisions, how to make better gesture decisions, so that your work stands out in the sea of demo reels that comes out. Because if you can do stuff at the level I'm talking about, at the level of uniqueness I'm talking about, you will have people banging on your door saying, please work for me. And people that you thought, wow, it'd be nice to work for them. So anyways, that's enough of that. Next month, audio breakdown, more capture stuff, less me blabbing. Well, I'll still be blabbing, but you won't watch me blab so much. Until then, God bless. All the best. Take care of yourselves. Be good. Enjoy spring. For those of you in the northern hemisphere, for those of you in the southern hemisphere, enjoy your autumn. Hope you have a wonderful one. See ya.